So today we're going to continue our look at different kinds of measurements. Remember, we've talked about measuring objects. We've talked about measuring lines, right? We've talked about measuring flat objects. And we've talked about measuring space inside objects. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the last measurement that we're going to look at, which is time. All right? Time is an important measurement. And we're going to focus on two areas. And that is the 12-hour and 24-hour clocks and how to convert between those two times. You'll need to be able to read both types of clocks. Okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those types. Yep. So we're just going to go through the Education Perfect lesson because that's where you'll be doing your homework. And I want you to be able to see the questions asked the way they ask them so you can answer these. All right? So let's just go there. Oops. So the first thing we're going to do is just do a little review of what 24-hour time is. Most of you are familiar with the idea of 24-hour time, but you may have forgotten. So remember that in the regular 12-hour clock, you have two different times of the day that the same number appears, right? You can have 2 o'clock in the morning or you can have 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we separate those or delineate those, define which one is which by using some...
Common sense.
You wish. By using some symbols afterwards. We call in the morning, we call that what? AM. In the afternoon, we call it PM. Yes, good. Okay. But there's also another clock available, the 24-hour clock, which makes us not have to make that kind of differentiation. We can tell what time it is and whether it's AM or PM by simply knowing the number that we're using.
What does AM and PM stand for?
You're going to find out. Okay? All right. So 12-hour notation, which ranges from 1 to 12 and alternates between AM and PM. And 24-hour notation, which ranges from 0 to 23. Now, you will have a question there because most of you also know that there is a 24 on the clock. Now, then the reason we use, and so 24 and 00 mean exactly the same thing. If you're talking about midnight tonight, that's 2,400 hours. It's in the future. Hasn't happened yet. If you're talking about midnight last night, the midnight that's already passed, that's 00. So they both exist, but clocks cannot tell you 2 times at once, right? So you are fine just saying 00 all the time. You never have to use 24, okay? So midnight is 00 unless you're talking about the future, but you're fine saying 00 all the time. Okay? So you're going to see it's a little confusing to some people because you have 2 different numbers for the same time, but that's why. 2,400 is when? In the future. That hadn't happened yet. 00 is when? In the past, it's the one that just happened. Okay? All right. But you can just use 00 all the time. Here we go. You wanted to know what AM and PM means? Here we are. So the 12-hour format that you're familiar with, AM, is from the Latin ante meridiem, meaning before midday. PM from the Latin post meridiem, meaning after midday. Yes? No, you do not need those definitions. Just remember AM and PM. If you want to, you can certainly do that. Yes, ma'am?
So, what is it like at midnight? If it's 00, does that mean it goes like at 1 past 12?
0001. Or, yeah. You bet. It's a 4-digit time all the time. Yes?
This is just a question. Would you consider 2 a.m. to be a suitable time to be making and drinking coffee?
Probably not, unless you work nights. Okay. There we go. That'll be about what we're talking about. Come on. Yes?
This is kind of a stupid question, but what time in the afternoon is it considered to drink night?
It depends on where you are and what time of the year it
Whenever
is.
it
So,
gets dark.
okay? Right? Okay, here we go. So, in the 24-hour time format, yes?
Who decided it would be 24 hours?
I haven't any idea. It's good research question. Shh, guys, come on. With the 12-hour format, we often describe the middle of the night, midnight, and midday. Below 12 a.m. is midnight. 12 p.m. is used to denote midday. Okay? So, 24-hour clocks avoid that confusion caused by 12-hour time because each number is used only once per day. So if we say that it's 11 in 24-hour time, you know that means 11 in the morning, right? It cannot happen any other time during the day. Whereas if you say, meet me at 11, you have to be specific about is it morning or evening, morning or night in the 12-hour time. Okay? So, the day start in the 24-hour clock, the day starts at 0000. Notice that they still use the colon. When you're dealing with that, when you're dealing with 24-hour time, you're going to see it a couple of different ways. You can see it written just like this. This just tells you that it's a regular time. This is the civilian version. Okay? Or you can also see it written like that, just 4 zeros. This is the military version. They are interchangeable, but you probably are not in the Army or Navy, right? Okay? So, in general, you will use the civilian version. Okay? But they are interchangeable. So you can see 1,300 hours written without the colon sometimes, right? Or you can see it written like this. Okay? So you'll see both different versions. I just wanted you to be familiar with. They mean the same thing. They're just used for two different things. The military, of course, not going to write anything that they don't have to because speed and might be a little bit more important there, maybe, right? Having extra stuff in there is going to make a difference to them, much more of a difference than it would to you. So it's just whether using a colon or not. Okay? All right? Actually, I can't go back to that right now because it's in a funny place, but it's all right. We'll talk about it some more. All right. So the day starts at 0000, which is midnight. Then it counts up. You go 1 all the way up to 12. 1200. These are read as 1200 in military time, but we usually don't call it 1200, but 12 o'clock. That's midday. From there, it keeps counting up. So instead of going back to 1 like the 12-hour clock, what would 1 o'clock be in the 24-hour clock? 13. Okay? So you just continue counting until you get to 24, which is when? Midnight. Okay? All right. Now, then they address that 00 and 2400. Remember, 00 is used for the past, 2400 is used for the future. Okay? All right. Whoops. That's your homework. I'm not doing that for you. So you're going to have some exercises. Let me pull those together for you.
Are we doing it now?
No, we've got one more thing we're going to work on first. Just some quick conversions between them. So give me just a... Now, the only other thing you're going to be asked to do other than being able to write them is being able to convert between the two. And converting between the two is very easy. All you have to remember is that after midday, noon, the 12-hour clock repeats. Yes? Afternoon, you start with 1 again. Yeah? And then 2, 3, etc. And you have to use PM. After midday for the 24-hour clock, what do you have to do to get that time? You simply continue counting from over 12, right? Okay? So, for example, 1 p.m. would be what? 1300, right? 13. So, you're just going to continue. Now, what you can do as a conversion, we'll talk about that. We can do it mathematically as well. Yes?
I don't know if this is the actual way to do it, but I was taught to -2 from the last digit in 24 hours to get the 12-hour time.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll talk about the mathematics of it in just a moment, okay? So, again, on the 12-hour clock, just measure the time, and if you have a 12-hour digital clock, of course, it's going to give you the time that you need. But we're going to be talking about converting between formats. Here we go. To convert 24-hour time into 12-hour time, follow these 2 easy steps. If the number is between 0100 and 1159, you're simply going to add AM, right? Because if it's below 12, you know that it's morning time, yes, in the 24-hour clock. If it's between 1300 and 2359, you're simply going to subtract 12 hours and add the PM.
Can we write this down?
Yes, we're going to write this down as notes, but I'm going to write it for you, so let's go with this. So, to convert to 12-hour from 24-hour. First, 2 different things can happen to you. If it's 001 to 1159, simply add AM to tell you that it's morning, right? To tell you which 001 to 59. Okay? Now, if it's after midday, so 1300 to 2359, simply subtract 12. Right? Because 12 is the repeater. That's the one that starts over again. So simply subtract 1200 from it. So, for example, if you have 1539, right? 1539, if I wanted to convert that, I would simply subtract the 1200 from it, which wouldn't change the 39 at all. But 15 minus 12 is what? 3. And then we need to call it what? PM. So subtract 12 and add the PM. Okay? So if it's an afternoon time, after, then you'll just subtract the 12. Yes?
So like Olivia, I got told to minus 2 off the front number. But I always got mucked up when it was 2330. I didn't, so if I subtracted it would still be
So you were told to subtract 2. Just make sure that you're very careful about the wording of the question itself. If it asks you to describe it, then you need to do all the work, right? If it just asks you for the answer, then you can certainly do that in your head or on your calculator and not worry about it. And remember, you guys have calculators. But if you're going to use them, remember you're only subtracting 12 from the first part of it, right? Or you can subtract 1200 from the whole thing. Don't do 1539 minus 12. That's going to give you an issue, right? Okay, and obviously the colon doesn't exist on your calculator anyway.
I was just gonna say, how do we get the colon on the calculator?
It doesn't exist on your calculator. But if you just push 1359 minus 12 in your calculator, is that going to give you the right answer? No. Remember, it's not minus 12. It's really minus 1200. Subtract 1200. Okay? So make sure you subtract it from the right number. Okay? All right. And that's all there is. Now, there are some special rules for midday and midnight. Because if you subtracted 12 from 12, if it was 12 noon and you subtracted 1200, what would happen? You get zeros, which is midnight, and that's not the same thing. So if the time is between 12 and 12:59, simply add PM. You don't have to subtract 12. Remember, you only have to do it if it's 1300 or more, because 12:59 PM is a time in 12-hour clock, isn't it? Yeah. 1300 is not. So if it looks like it doesn't belong, then that means that you need to use the subtraction, right? Do you see a 1300 on a regular clock? No. That means you have to convert it. Does that make sense? By subtracting the 1200. But do you see a 12 on there? Yes. So that's fine. Just put PM on the end. Okay? Right. If the time is between 00 and 0:59, just change the hour to 12 and add the AM. So that's the only really weird one, is you have to make sure that you remember that means midnight. So you have to put the midnight in, the 12 o'clock. Okay? Right? Now, to go the other way, we just do the opposite. Instead of subtracting 12, what do you think? We're going to add 12, but we're going to write those down just to be sure. Okay? To convert from 24-hour to 12-hour, okay? Or is that the one we just did?
No.
Yeah, we just
Mr. Stout, you just made me mess up my notes.
Oh, you'll survive. Did I do them backwards? All right.
Do you have a so
So what we're going to do is, thank you. If it's after 12:59 p.m., then you're simply going to add 1200. Right? So we just need to make the numbers bigger. So say we have, for example, 1:35 p.m. To change that into 24-hour time, I simply need to add 1200, which would give me what? 13:35. And do I need p.m. for that? No, because I know if the number is bigger than 12, we're talking afternoon, after midday. Yeah? Okay, so instead of subtracting, we're adding, because the numbers are bigger. Make sense? All right. So I have a chance to write that down. So if the time is between 12 and 11:59, simply remove the AM. If it's between 1 and 11:59, it has a PM. Simply add 12 hours and remove the PM. Okay. Once again, at 12 a.m. and 12 p.m., those two behave a little bit differently. If it's 12 p.m., you simply remove the PM, right? But if it's between 12 and 12:59 and it's AM, we change that to what? 00. In other words, if it's afternoon, which midnight is, right, you simply subtract the 12 away, to the 1200 away.
yeah.
So it's still the same rule, basic. Yeah, so you don't need a special rule. Okay? So let's convert this to 24-hour notation. Simply add and remove the PM. So in 24-hour format, 7 p.m. becomes what? Well, becomes 1900. There you go. So p.m. Okay? Now, 7 a.m. would become what? 0700, right? Okay? Okay? There you go. Yes?
Did you call it like 19 o'clock?
We typically, you can call it 19 o'clock, but typically it's just called 1900. Okay? You just name it as a number. Okay? So you're going to have some conversions there, and that's the rest of your homework. Okay? And so that sums up what we're going to be doing about time. Let me get your assignment ready.